This is episode 12 of DNA of Games, the podcast series highlighting the disabled and neurodiverse talent in the games industry. I am your host Chris, and this podcast was created to chat with other disabled and neurodiverse developers like myself and normalise the discussion around disability and neurodiversity in the games industry. Hi and welcome to another episode of DNA of Games, a podcast that goes around talking to other disabled and neurodiverse people that work in the games industry. And today I have a very special guest. The one feels like I'm cheating because it's almost like I just ran around the office and just found the first person I could find. But I have Wren Snowball, who I have met through Third Kind Games, the HR assistant now, or HR admin. What is your
admin
title?
Assistant.
There we
HR
go.
admin assistant.
Very formal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself in a better way.
I mean, that's pretty much the best introduction I could think of. But yeah, I'm Wren Snowball. It's a great name. I know everyone's thinking it. I did choose it myself, so that's a fun little thing. I changed my name a while back and chose Wren, and Snowball's my partner's name. But yeah, I work in HR at Third Kind with you, Chris. I do music. I play games. Do a little bit of a bunch of different things. Yeah, that's kind of the basic me.
The basic you. I would say, I guess the listeners and / viewers will be interested to know, how do you identify in terms of whether that's neurodiversity or disability, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. I feel like my identity is very much tied into a whole bunch of different things. So I have autism and ADHD, which obviously is a big impact on my life. But I think that those aspects of myself have massively informed how I identify outside of the disability sphere. Being autistic has really challenged the way I view society and myself and things like gender, for example. I identify as non-binary, which was something that took me a long time to come to terms with, because your gender roles are so forced down everyone's throats from a very young age. And I was always like, yeah, I'm a woman. I'm not a woman. I definitely spent a few years going down that path, and then coming to terms with my sexuality as well. I identified as bisexual and then a lesbian and then bisexual again, and all of this I think is so tied in with my neurodiversity, because I'm constantly challenging who I am as a person and how I interact with the world.
That's really interesting, because I think you potentially might be one of the first guests to actually speak about how it ties into that intersectionality between identity, because like you said, I guess it informs how you think about yourself and how you present yourself, I guess, to society as well.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely been a long journey. I didn't find out I was autistic until I was about 18, I think. And with ADHD, it was even later than that. So I'm still waiting on a formal diagnosis, but boy, do I have it. I've done all of the quizzes you can think of, and I fit all the diagnostic criteria. So I'm just like, I've got it.
Thank you, BuzzFeed, for those quizzes. I do identify as that teapot and possibly ADHD.
I've been doing those BuzzFeed quizzes for so long. It's part of my identity is I am a BuzzFeed quiz taker. but yeah, I think not finding out about my neurodiversity until later in life, with ADHD, it wasn't so formal. I was in therapy when I was younger, and that was my therapist said, have you considered you might be autistic? And I was like, no, what's autism? And then I went and had an assessment done, and they were like, so you're autistic. And I was like, cool, thanks. I don't know what to do with this information now, so I'm not gonna do anything with it for the next 5 years. But yeah, with ADHD, my partner was doing some research because she thought she had ADHD. And then we started doing the research together, and I was like, hang on a second. I have all of these diagnostic criteria and more. And then as goes with neurodiversity, I did a bit of a hyper focus on neurodiversity. And I was like going through TikTok and looking at other neurodiverse content creators and thinking, oh, I relate to every single word you're saying all of the time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So that is me. And with that realization, a lot of things in my life started to fall into place. Like the way that I acted as a child, the way I interacted with things as a child and teenager and everything.
Yeah.
So much of that is attributed to my neurodiversity, and it's so freeing to understand that.
Yeah.
And like, it's never an excuse. Like, it's not, oh, sorry, I couldn't meet that deadline because I have ADHD. But it is definitely, like, at work, I can speak to my manager and to my colleagues and have a bit more understanding with that, because I can say, well, yeah, I do struggle to focus on long bits of writing at once, or I need to take regular breaks when I'm doing things, and it gives me so much more freedom to just be, because I understand myself in that way.
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of tying it back into like your current job role, like in HR, like, how has it helped you or not helped you in terms of being like a HR professional, like working with people, etc.?
Yeah, like, I think working with people has always been one of my biggest strengths. I love people. I love talking. I wouldn't say I love the sound of my own voice, but I do love talking. Having recorded myself enough times, I've learned not to like my voice. But, yeah, like people, like figuring out what makes other people tick is something that I've had to learn to do, being autistic and not understanding people so well. I'm like, I'm gonna turn this around and I'm gonna force myself to work out how other people work. And so in all of my jobs, I've always been, the outgoing, the friendly, everyone talks to me and stuff like that. And I've always been a good listener. At the same time, when I was at school, my friends would always tell me all these personal things, and I'm like, yep, I know this about you now. That's cool. And so I think it feels very natural to me to be in this role, because I get that opportunity to listen to people's problems and try and help them, and to talk to people in so many different ways all the time. And that aspect of my role, I think, I find amazing. And a lot of my role is like very repetitive, monotonous tasks, like sending out emails to everyone, or writing contracts for people, or sending out all these different documents. And I absolutely love it. I thrive on that kind of let me just populate a spreadsheet for the next week and I'll be happy. But at the same, it causes a lot of difficulties. Like, I've had to write extended bits of documentation, for example, like rewriting policies and stuff like that. And I sit there staring at the screen for 3 hours, and all I've written is the title of the document. And my thoughts are spinning so fast that it like, I actually made this analogy earlier today. It's like all of the words I'm trying to say or think are spinning around like a tornado in my brain, and they're going so fast I can't see any of them. And so I'm having hundreds of thousands of thoughts at once, but I can't think any of them.
Yeah.
And so that definitely presents big challenges. But I do feel like I'm in a really good environment to work through that, because all my colleagues are so great. There's this one guy called Chris, he's really good.
Chris McCarthy, yes, recruiter.
Of course, it's the only Chris we have. But yeah, I think it definitely gives me advantages in some aspects, but gives me a lot of struggles in others.
Yeah, I guess sort of my interest then is like, sort of been like being in that HR or operations department, and sort of being neurodivergent, and then having to work with neurotypical people, and then having like these two group of people that tend to like process information differently, tend to communicate differently, and go bash together in a team and get it to work perfectly together. Like, how. I guess because obviously you've got that standpoint of being neurodivergent, kind of coming in and sort of say, hey, this is how somebody who neurodiverse is going to potentially think, potentially do this, potentially see this information. But do you also have to sort of teach yourself the neurotypical way to sort of see it from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I've had to do from a very young age anyway, because,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I very much struggle with interactions if I don't know how the other person is going to respond. So I have learned to predict people pretty well. I like, it's going to sound really sad, but I practice this on like TV shows. I'll be watching a show and I'll be like, you're going to say these words in this order next. And then I like congratulate myself when it's right. And then if it's not right, I'm like, okay, so that's how you said it. Cool. Now I know. But like, I've gotten really good at that skill. And so, which presents challenges in itself, because then I interrupt people because I know what they're going to say. And I like finish their sentences for them. And yeah, but I think having that need to be able to anticipate what is happening helps me a lot with neurotypical people, because I feel that neurotypical people are quite straightforward. Like, there's a lot of subtext in a lot of what they have to say, but at the same time, like, I've been around neurotypical people for so long, and I thought I was neurotypical for so long and pretended to be neurotypical for so long that it kind of just comes naturally. But at the same time, I feel like I need to almost champion for the non-neurotypical people.
Yeah.
And like, I am around plenty of them. Like, all of my friends are neurodiverse in some form or another. And I think having an outspoken neurodiverse voice makes things better for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, some of the work I'm trying to do with our accessibility group is making sure our studio is a better place for neurodiverse people.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of neurodiversity is hidden disability and things you don't realize are a disability because you've been dealing with it for the last 50 years or whatever.
Yeah. I think a common thing, especially with quite a few of my guests that I've had already that have been neurodiverse, has been that late diagnosis. They've really just come into owning their, like their label, their diagnosis, and that actually struggle just to get to that point. And it's interesting to sort of have when they're sort of realizing that, and the power that gives them.
It's really empowering to understand how you behave and the reasons behind it, and knowing yourself in that way means that you can predict how you will react to things. So like, I know that if I'm going into a big meeting with lots of people, I'm going to be anxious, because talking to one person one-on-one, it's great, it's so easy. Talking to a small group of people, 2 or 3, it's fine, I can engage that many people. When it's a group of 20 people, it's so much harder, because I have to be so much more engaging for all of those people. But at the same time, when it's one-on-one, I can work out how you work. I can think, okay, I know how Chris is going to respond to me. But if there were 20 Chris's who were all actually not Chris and they were all different people, I might know how that person's going to react, but I don't know how that one's going to react. And so I have to be aware of the fact that that's going to affect me before I get into that situation. And a lot of it is just trial and error. Like, I put myself in a situation and I realize, oh, this is not easy. I'm not sure I can do this. And then sometimes I put myself in that situation and I deal with it so much better than I expect. But it's definitely a case of, I need to know how I respond to things, and learning how I respond to things helps inform how other people might respond to things who are in the same situation as me. So everything feeds into everything. The more I know myself, the more I learn other people, the more I learn myself.
I've definitely been learning more of like the neurodiversity and that. I always I'm thankful that I work with people who are neurodiverse, sort of having friends who are neurodiverse, and that learning of like, oh, actually, I'm not. The information is not going in. I can see it from their face, sort of thing. And it's interesting. I can sort of I'm not starting to see like, oh, they're masking right now, or like they're actually being their more authentic self.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting to see those personalities sort of come at the forefront.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the the experiences that they share with me and saying all about having learning or sort of relearning and sort of seeing, oh, that's the way I behave because X, Y, Z, and yeah, where was my thought going? Yeah, sorry, I just like we were saying about like sort of that learn. You have to sort of live the experience to go through it to realize where you are, what you need, because it's not a on-off switch for neurodiversity. You've got all the just like sliders and spinny bits and like, it's going to take you a while to get all the right settings for what you need on a particular day. Even like it could be different next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that I've learned through my own research is, especially for people like myself with ADHD, having a routine is often harmful because let's say I made a routine where every morning I get out of bed, I have breakfast, and then I work out. That's my morning routine. And then one morning I wake up and I simply do not have the energy. Getting a pan out of the cupboard to cook some eggs and then toasting the bread and buttering. It's all too many steps.
Yeah.
And then when I don't fulfill my routine, then I beat myself up about it because I'm like, well, this is something so simple. I should be able to do this. Why can't I do it? And so what I've learned is that having systems is so much more effective. So rather than like forcing yourself, you will do the same thing at this time every day. When you have the energy, you can do this thing. When you're low on energy, just have a bowl of cereal instead. And maybe just go for a walk instead of doing a full-on workout in your living room. And having those coping mechanisms, essentially, that's what it is. Because it's my brain doesn't work in the same way as someone else's brain. And what works for someone else doesn't work for me. And vice versa, of course. But, yes, it's like having things like systems in place really make a massive difference. And I think that can be applied to everywhere. So whether it's your morning system or how you act at work, or how you interact with people more when you've got the energy and you keep yourself a bit more reserved when you don't, and explaining that to people as well, because I personally believe that the more open we all are about our, I don't want to say shortcomings, but the difficulties we face, then the more effectively other people can treat us with the respect and whatever that we deserve. So if I come into work and I'm just hiding in the corner and not talking to anyone, people might think, oh, is everything okay with Wren? And then they might start trying to talk to me. And I'm like, I don't want that. But if I explain to people, some days I don't want to look at you or hear you or see you or even have you breathe in the same room as me. That's too much. And having that conversation allows me to have a much more enjoyable time at work every day.
Yeah. I guess like my question, because like some of the listeners will be curious, like because whether they're trying to break into the industry themselves or they're still at that sort of like junior level, they're sort of like, I guess the feeling that you need to sort of conform and fit into like a company or whatever. So they find it very hard to go, hey, I need to be different. I need this way of working, instead of all, the typical way that you're all doing. I might be like this. And that's kind of nerve-wracking to like sort of, because it's kind of like, I need to throw a spanner in your works to make it work.
Yeah, I completely get that. That's a big point. And I think for me, I'm really lucky that I've landed into a work environment that supports people being themselves. But I have been in environments in the past where that wasn't such an option. I used to work in reception in GP practices. And so in that role, it's very much you come to work, you look smart, you look professional, you don't let your personal life into work, you put your head down, do your work, go home. And at the time, my mask was evolved to deal with that. And I just I did that. But there were parts of myself that I couldn't keep away from that. So like my excessive need for snacking. If I'm not eating, my brain isn't feeling sufficiently stimulated.
Yeah.
And so I would come into work with a backpack full of snacks. Like, a big 3-pack box of Jaffa cakes and a pack of penguin biscuits, and I would just eat these throughout the day. People would look at me like, Wren, what are you doing? Why are you eating so much? And I was like, I need to. But I do think that regardless of your environment, it's important to be yourself as much as you can, as much as is appropriate. Like, there are some things that are necessary. Like, if you have needs, you need to make sure they're being met in whatever environment you're in, whether it's a social circle, whether it's with family, whether it's at work.
Yeah.
But there are some things that aren't appropriate to bring into every setting. Like, you might talk about some things with your friends, but not with your parents, and some things with your parents, but not at work.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is so much a neurodiverse issue. Like, everyone faces that. Like, what I talk about with my friends is not appropriate for my family. And probably not appropriate for work either, let's be honest. But for me, it's about developing a different mask for every situation I'm in.
Okay.
So when I'm with my friends, that mask can slip a little. I can be more of myself because I trust my friends. My friends are really good, and I don't need to worry about being judged around them, and I'm really lucky on that. And in all honesty, it's kind of the same at work. When I started in this job, I don't know, 7-8 months ago? So I'm just looking at the calendar. What month are we in? I don't know.
All those years ago when you first started.
Exactly. It feels like it. But when I started, I was definitely putting that I'm a professional mask on and not allowing myself to have my autistic moments, as I call them, where, like, I think it was last week, I came into the office, and where we have our tea in the cupboard, we have all the little boxes of different tea bags. I went to get my normal tea, and there was a different type of tea in the box. And I had a full-on, I can't do this, I can't make a cup of tea for like 2 whole minutes. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Not only does my tea not exist anymore, there's something else in the spot where it goes. And I couldn't handle it. And then I got to my desk, and like there were some papers on my desk, and I didn't know what they were. And it's just more layers of things that I was struggling to deal with. And I was really struggling that day. And I noticed I started stimming more. My hands were flapping a lot, and I was spinning in circles, which is something that I do when I get overwhelmed. And I started saying things to my colleagues, like, Edie was sitting next to me, and I walked up to her, and I was saying all these things, and my speech was going so fast because I was having a bit of a freak out. But it was fine, because she was like, oh, can I help? And knowing that I am safe to have those moments at work has allowed me to drop that mask quite a lot. Like, when I come to work, I'm pretty much myself. And so I think, to go back to the question you actually asked me, I think it's definitely a case of knowing your environment, knowing the people you're around, and fostering an environment where it is safe to speak out about yourself. Because, I'm not going to talk about what I talk about with my friends at work, but at the same time, it's knowing what is safe to talk about and how to talk about it. And if I have a problem, I know that I can talk about that. And if I couldn't, then that would be a problem. If I had some accommodations that I needed at work, which I do to an extent, like the way that I learn new things and the way I manage my work on a day-to-day basis, I do need accommodations on that. And when I speak to my manager about it, it's a case of, okay, well, what do you need? How can I help? I can't quite do that, but how does this work for you? And it's a very open conversation about it, which allows me to feel safe and supported. And without that support network in every aspect of my life, I would struggle so much more. But I think even if a person feels that they don't have that support network at work, for example, take your manager, or if they're not supporting you, whoever their manager is, aside in a private meeting and say, look, I'm not feeling supported at work. Can you help me? And if you work out what you need for support, you can lay out a bunch of things. I need you to give me my daily work in a list so that I can prioritize and I can tick things off. Then, as long as it's a reasonable request, I can't imagine why any decent employer would not oblige. So I think it's definitely a case of learning your needs and how to speak about them.
Yeah.
I think is what I was trying to say in a very long-winded way.
Well, it's that sort of thing, like, it's a simple answer, but, it's better to give the context, whether it's your own life, like, experience, like, this is how I've, experienced doing, just basically telling about my need, and this, like, I think if you're I think this is kind of why the podcast exists, and why, I champion a lot more for, neurodiverse or disabled voices to talk about the experiences, because it gives more context for people to grasp on and hold on to that. Oh, that's why you say basically just talk about your needs more, or pull people aside, just like as simple as that, and say, oh yeah, because you've had similar experience to me, and I know what if you manage to solve it, maybe I can solve my issues.
And I think a lot for the majority of people who have some kind of disability, whether it's a neurodisability or a physical disability, there is a lot of trauma that comes with that from repressing your needs. It's like, oh, I can do everything the way everyone else does it. I have to be able to, because why wouldn't I be able to? And then you suppress your needs and you don't learn how to deal with them, which is something that I did for decades. And it wasn't until the last year or two that I started to really think about how could I support myself.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of support from other people to get there. And I'm still getting there. But it's definitely, there is a lot of trauma that comes with disability.
Oh yeah, God yeah. Like I know myself. I keep yaddering my, like, people go, "Are you okay?" Like, like, we can help sort you out, even as simple as like headphones. I'm like, oh, I'll just make do with these. I'm all right. It's just like, I'm not all right. It's not the best solution. It's like, and I'm getting used to embracing that support, because I'm so used to sort of pushing it to the side, because I'll keep thinking, if I say something, or say, like, that'll just deem me as, like, a more problematic employee, a more weak employee.
You don't want to have needs, because you should be able to do everything yourself, and that's just not true. And once you recognize that you're not the same as everyone else, no one's the same as anyone else. Like, it's not just the fact that we might have a disability or a neurodifference or whatever. I'm not the same as you. You're not the same as anyone else. And when you add on the difficulties that we face through our disability, through our trauma, through all the things that we've gone through in life, we need support. Like, it would be crazy if we didn't need support, because I mean, I've gone through a lot in my life. I've moved schools due to bullying. I've had a difficult family life at home. I've not had friends at all until like the last 4 years, and so many things just add up to I really need support. And I deserve that support, and you deserve that support, and everyone deserves that support. Because without that support, you're not going to be able to do your best.
Yeah, I guess, like, you're never going to reach that place of, like, happiness, whether, like, sort of work-life balance, happiness in work, happiness in your own life. And, it's like you said, you literally will have two roads that you can go down. You go down the road where you burn yourself out, you destroy your mind and body for what? For nothing. Or you can, like you say, you realise that you need to embrace, like, the support networks around you, the things that you're entitled to receive. Like, it's like, it's a really weird, like, parallel line. Like, you can either go the best version or, like, the worst version. There's no middle ground.
Like, when I was at university the first time, because I did go back for a semester. We don't talk about that. But when I was at university, I really was burning myself out. I was doing a course and I was working 3 jobs at the same time.
Yeah.
And I lived at home, but I didn't have any home life. I just went to school, went to work, went to work, went to work, went to school, went to work. And it was so much, and I never got any accommodations in any of my situations.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I've got this holiday at work. Why don't I just take a day off? Because I can, because I want to, because I'm feeling a bit tired this week and I could do with a long weekend. And it's so simple. Like, I used to be proud of the fact that I had worked 45 days in a row without a break. And it's like, yeah, I've gone to school 3 days a week, and every other day of the week I've been working at least 1 job per day. I would leave 1 shift and go to a different job.
Wow.
Sometimes I'll go to school and then go to work, and I didn't have a single day to myself for months.
Yeah.
But I would boast about it. I'd be like, oh, look at me, I'm completing capitalism. I've got first place in the game.
I think I'm winning, question mark.
Yeah, I might be exhausted and I might struggle to actually wake up and do basic self-care. But you know what? I'm winning. But now, like, yeah, when I need time off, I take it. When learning that if you're not feeling well mentally, that is still a reason to take a sick day.
Yeah.
And there are so many things that you don't realize there are accommodations built in for you. You just are so used to not having them that you don't use them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I guess, you know, listeners would be interested to know how you actually got into games, you know.
Yeah. It's very... I was extremely lucky. Growing up, my passion and everything was always music.
Okay.
I was like, I mean, I've played an instrument for as long as I can remember. I've played a bunch of different instruments.
That's where I can impress you with my grade 2 violin.
Oh, I never did grades, so you're beating me. But, I mean, I played recorder as everyone did in like primary school, and then I learnt French horn when I was 6. I played in the Royal Albert Hall when I was 7, so that was exciting. Yeah. All I remember is I played the Wallace and Gromit theme tune. But then I've been playing guitar for as long as I can remember, and then when I was at uni, I learned how to play drums and bass, and I've always tinkered on the piano, and I sing. Like, music is such a huge part of my life, and I always thought that I would get a career in music. I was going to start a recording studio and do all these things, and then I realized I didn't actually want to work in that industry. Also, I couldn't, because I couldn't get in. And then I met my partner almost 4 years ago, and she was doing a games design, I think it's games design course at university when we met, and she had all these consoles that I never had access to growing up. So I'd never played games except for the odd Guitar Hero jam or a bit on the Wii when I went to my friend's house and played Wii Sports. But I suddenly got into games, and I couldn't even use the 2 joysticks individually. I was like, I move, and then I look, and then I move. And then I played the game Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I don't know if you know that game.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
That was the first game that I ever played and completed. And it ignited this love of games in me. I was like, first of all, the story is amazing. Second of all, it taught me how to use the joysticks individually. And then I went on, I played The Witcher 3, I played Skyrim, I played all these different games. And I fell in love with games as a player. Yeah. And then hearing my partner talk about making games and all this code she was doing, I got really excited, and I was like, oh, maybe I should get a job in QA because I'm great at breaking games. I broke The Witcher 3 so bad that the PlayStation gave up. It was a full-on shutdown bug. So I got a mentor in QA through the limit break. Through that, what do you call it?
Mentorship? program thing?
Yeah, program. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. So I got a QA mentor through Limit Break, and they were great. It was great to meet a person who was neurodiverse and also non-binary in the industry.
Yeah.
And so they taught me a lot, but then I realized that writing bug reports is really hard. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to university and do a games technology course. And so I phoned Coventry University and I said, can I join the course? And they said, you can, but we're already 5 weeks in. So you've got 5 weeks worth of catch up to do. And in this time, I had been applying to every game studio that I could find in the immediate area to me. And I got no response, sorry. And so I went to university. I started this course. Absolutely did awful. Could not get the hang of code. And then a few weeks into the course, Chris McCarthy called me and said, would you like a job? Like, well, I'm doing a degree now, so no.
Okay, kind stranger.
Yeah. And so I was like, I turned down the job. And then I got to Christmas on my first semester. Semester ended. Didn't do any work over Christmas break because I couldn't face opening my computer. Got really depressed about it. I was having a really hard time. And then I thought, why am I forcing myself to do this? I got offered a job at this studio. And so I emailed Chris. And I was like, do you still have a job? And then I think 4 weeks later I started. So it's definitely a case of knowing the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, I went through all these different places that took me to here and gave me experience in the games industry, however small it was. But having that mentor, doing that semester of games design or games tech, I learned about the internal working of games.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm only in an admin position, that knowledge definitely helped me here. Because I was like, well, I have a passion for games. I have some knowledge of how games are made. And I'm also really good at talking to people and doing admin work. So I think you should hire me. And they said, okay. So 7 months later, we're still going.
They haven't got a reason to get rid of me yet.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to keep it that way.
Well, that's interesting because, like, you know, it's that sort of... when people are at university or in education, it's that sort of weighing up your options of like, should I really quit like being on this course to like take a risk of a job sort of thing? Yeah,
and it was really terrifying because I was like, well, I'm doing this course so I can get the knowledge to get a job in the industry. But at the same time, if I can get a job anyway, do I need the degree? And I remember talking to one of the people who was in the year above me, and she like helped out the first years.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got offered a job and I turned it down because I'm here. And she looked at me like I was insane. You got offered a job in the games industry, that you're here to learn things, to get into the games industry, to get a job. But you've been offered one now and you didn't take it. And I was like, I really did do that, didn't I? And I realized that I couldn't keep going with this course. Like, I never caught up the first 5 weeks because learning new content and having 5 weeks worth of content to catch up on is so intense. Like, you need to 100% commit and just sort of study is the only thing you do. And I couldn't commit to that. So I was like, I can't do this. So I remember speaking to my brother and having like a 2-hour-long conversation with him about it. And he was like, do what's right for you. Like, if you're going to fail this course, probably don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, exactly that, you know. Who knows, if you stayed on the course, would you have stuck it out sort of thing? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it was a real stressful thing. So I was like, on the one hand, I could get a degree. On the other hand, I'm not going to get a degree. So I was like, you know what? To hell with it. I'm going to message this nice recruiter man from this cool looking company. And he was like, well, that job I had offered you is gone, but I can offer you this job. And it was the best decision I've ever made. Like, this job is perfect for me. It allows me to work in a way that suits me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got really lucky.
No, that's it's really nice to hear. Like, and I think it's that sort of thing where I always think that there could be listeners that are obviously looking at games, or if they can get into games themselves. And I guess you start about a good example of like sort of creating opportunities for yourself, and then obviously grabbing those opportunities that they come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was searching up game studios in Leamington, game studios in Kenilworth, game studios in Warwick, and just emailing everyone. And I think I also got lucky because before I got this job, I was unemployed for a really long period of time. As over a year, I was unemployed for. I got COVID sacked from my previous job.
Yeah.
I had COVID symptoms, so I took time off work. And then when I came back, they said, you're fired for taking time off work.
Oh, God.
Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. But that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't find another job. I was looking for more jobs in admin in the medical industry and looking for like data entry jobs. And I couldn't find anything. And I was just like, I've been applying to so many jobs and getting so many no's. And then I got on Universal Credit.
Yeah.
And through Universal Credit, they put me into this program to help people get employed. And part of that was looking at your CV. And so I actually had a professional just basically rewrite my CV for me. I was like, yeah, can I have a one-on-one session where you look at my CV and tell me what to write? And then she told me what to write, took my CV home with her, rewrote it, and then gave it to me and said, here you go, now you can have a job. And like my CV before was a little bit trash. And then it became this really professional document.
Yeah.
Which definitely helped.
Yeah. Well, like, what's interesting, I think, from your experience and your life, funny enough, is like that love of gaming and wanting to get into the industry kind of came in later. Like, obviously, a lot of people I talk to are kind of like, I've been playing games since I was a little wee person. Like,
yeah.
Okay, but yeah, it's nice it was really refreshing actually for someone to have got that viewpoint. Like, oh no, I didn't start playing games till like, a couple of few years ago sort of thing.
I was about, 20, 21 when I started playing games. And like, I remember growing up, like my brothers had a PlayStation 1 and then they had a PlayStation 2 and then they all left home, but they all got PlayStation 3s and I'm pretty sure someone's got a PS4 somewhere. And I'm the only one who's got a PS5 though.
Humble brag.
Yeah, humble brag. But I was never allowed to play games on them. And like when I tried to play racing games, my brother would get so mad at me because I would be like, moving with the car, and he's like, it doesn't do anything. The joystick does all the moving. You swaying side to side. And I'm like, yeah, but it helps me in my head. And that's what matters. I'm still gonna lose the race, but it helps me in my head.
My sibling was always doing that. Like, she would say,
yeah. Yeah. I still do it now. I can't help it. And if I'm in a tense fight, my whole body tenses up, and I'm like, ugh, and then I win the fight, and then my whole body relaxes, and I didn't realize I was so tense. But yeah, I never got the opportunity to develop that love for games growing up. The only personal console I had was a Nintendo DS Lite. And the amount of games you can play on that are quite limited. Like, the amount of, like, games that really foster love of games, I mean.
Yeah.
And I only had a few games. The two games I remember was Nintendogs, and there was a brain training game that I absolutely loved. I've got it on the Switch now. That Dr. Kawashima.
My mom absolutely loved that.
Yeah. My mum had it on her DS, and every time I went to her house, I would sit there and just, I'm so smart, I'm doing the music game, and I'm so good at it. Yeah! But yeah, and then when I met my partner, I really fell in love with games. And I think another thing that is quite relevant to the fact that I started playing games later in life is I'm not very good at games. That doesn't stop me enjoying them, but I'm not very good. And so every game I play, I always play on easy mode. And when you talk to some of the seasoned gamers who've been playing games since they were like little children, they're like, "Oh, you play on easy? What are you, a little baby? You can't play games. You should play on hard and get the real challenge." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not fun. It's a game. It's meant to be fun."
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes I'll get spicy and put the difficulty up to medium, and then it'll get too hard and I'll put it back down to easy. But I think that being into games later in life has allowed me that freedom because I'm not in it for the challenge. I'm in it for the fun. And I've had so many arguments with my brother about this, my oldest brother. He's like, "Yeah, but if you play on easy, you don't get that achievement." I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I still win the game." And then I get to enjoy it the whole time. And I think that's the joy of it. And I think that everyone should get into games and play at the level that works for them. And if the challenge brings you joy, then go for it. Play on hard. But if it's experiencing the story and the dialogue and the characters, why not play on easy? Like, you get to experience it so much more freely. I think it's crazy.
No, it's a good viewpoint to have, and you know, it's right because, like, you know, we shouldn't be creating a, you know, game that for you sort of scenario. You know, it should be for everyone.
Absolutely. I think that games are such a useful resource as well. Like, you can use games to teach people things like empathy. And I think, like, for neurodiverse people, they're such a great resource, like using games for therapy and escapism. Like, games were a big part of me working out my gender identity because, like, I'm an absolute sucker for character customization. You give me a game. If you could make a game for me that was just but build a character. Now build another character. Now you have 50 characters that all live in a plaza together and they're all you. Cool, go. I would be on it so fast. I would pay so much money for it.
I think you just described making The Sims.
Yeah, but The Sims is less fun because you have to actually keep them alive. For me, Sims is you build a character and then you close the Sims. Then you open Sims. Forget you've already built a character. Build a new character and then close the Sims. But yeah, I spend almost more energy building the character in these games than I do playing the game.
Yeah.
And realizing that I could build a character that looks like anything. I could play as the male character in games. I could make my name whatever I want it to be. Allowed me that freedom to explore that in myself. And like, I play Dungeons and Dragons as well, and that's like all my characters are male because I could never play a female. I don't know what a woman is. But yeah, it's just like having that role-playing element to games, whether it's tabletop games or RPGs or like The Witcher or Skyrim, where you actually get to build your own character, or it's like any of those games. It gives you the freedom to think about, well, what is my ideal me? What would, in an ideal world, what would I look like? Or what would I sound like? Or how would I behave? And like playing those games where you get to choose the dialogue and it impacts the story.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if I was a different person, I could say this. And it gave me so much freedom to work out who I was, and I'm sure it does that for so many other people. Like helping people work out if they're trans or not, like playing as a male character and having people call you he, him, or she, her, or whatever. And just so many realizations that stem from games.
I'll be honest, like, I didn't really appreciate because like that big of impact. Like, it's like, oh yeah, you can play the life that you want to live, sort of thing. But actually, it's more profound than that. You know, it's kind of like, I guess it's not subtle. It's weird. It's kind of like subtle in a way. It's kind of like, you know, it's actually reaffirming and like, you know, so like I said, like it's sort of, you know.
Absolutely, and it's also a lot of escapism. Like if you've got a difficult home life, or if you're having to mask everywhere you go, you can have that time to just run around and slap a monster and feel cool, or feel like a hero, or feel like a villain. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you can do anything, and I think that's part of what I love so much about games.
Yeah.
Is you can do anything, you can be anything, you can go anywhere.
I know we've been quite loose with our structure this week on this episode, but I guess my sort of last question sort of ties into all that. But you might have don't worry if you have to repeat yourself. But it's kind of that, you know, that sort of magical gaming moment for you. Like, you know, what was the sort of thing of like, wow, this is like, games are it. Or this game has made me love games more.
Yeah, it was definitely, a lot of it was that first full title that I played, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, because I had never really played games before, and once I sat down and played this game, the story was beautiful. When I was playing the end game, my friend was sitting in the room with me, and they were absolutely bawling, just on the floor, catatonic, tears everywhere. And I was really emotional with it as well, and I realised that this game has helped me with my dexterity, so now I can move my thumbs independently.
Yeah.
This game had the most beautiful story, and I just wanted to play more. And then I kept playing more games, and I got more into it.
Yeah.
And like now, if I pick up a new game, using the controller is second nature. But a new game always gives me that sense of wonder, like, oh, this is amazing. Look, it's so pretty. Look over there. Look over there. Oh, there's a new character. Oh, it's so good. And I think there's a big part of that with my neurodiversity is like finding that childlike joy in everything. And
yeah,
I like to think that I find more joy than the average person from these things. And playing games is such a large part of my life now. When I finish work, I want to play a game. When I've got a day off, I want to play a game. I want to find a new game. I always want that new...
Yeah,
and it's like finding a big game that you can really sink your teeth in and play for hundreds of hours. Like when I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I put hundreds of hours into that. And I loved every second of it.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, it's wonderful that you have, like, you know, that kind of grown-up joy that we all... like, you do kind of lose it when you sort of, as you grow up, like, that sort of, like, you know, that childlike wonder of new things and excitement of, like, sort of doing the new thing. And it's obviously, it's nice that you've got games to do that for you. Like, you know...
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a bit of a struggle with my my old manness now of like, oh, this game's coming out. Oh, that's got the energy to play it. But I would love to get that sort of enjoy of like, oh, next game. Like, I can't wait to have the next day off to like, you know, really jump, like headfirst into this.
Like looking at all the new games that are coming out, I'm constantly like, oh, I want to play that one and that one and that one. Oh, there are too many games. But it's all worth it to me, because the joy that I get from opening a new game for the first time and getting to build your character and seeing all the other characters in the world and learning the combat systems or learning the farming systems, whatever it is, it just brings me so much joy and almost purpose in my life. I feel like I'm getting out of bed for a reason, and that's huge to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing.
I do too. I think it's amazing too. That's unfortunately all we got time for this week. We could literally talk for hours. I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, I could definitely talk for hours, and you're very easy to talk to, Chris.
But yeah, I don't know whether you have any social media where people could follow you, perhaps, or not.
Not really.
Like, Wren will...
The only thing I've got is my Spotify, which has 2 songs on it. 2 whole songs.
Please repeatedly listen so Wren can monetize that and get money for listening. And like something like 0003 pence.
Yeah.
Oh, but no, that's okay. Like, not everybody has to be on social media, kids.
I just don't get it. I don't do anything on social media. Stopped using Facebook. I've never used Twitter. Like, not for me.
You forever remain the enigma amongst all the guests. So, where are they? What were they?
Yeah.
Where will they be next?
I never actually existed. This podcast was just a dream.
God, I've got to stop imagining up HR professionals. I don't know why it's always HR people.
Yeah, maybe you should see someone about that. Maybe not an HR professional though.
Oh, well, I will say thank you so much for joining me on my little old podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Who knows when I'll see you next?
I'm sure sometime.
Sometime, hopefully in the future, maybe. But yeah, so thank you again. Keep tuned because we'll have more people who are disabled or neurodiverse that work in the games industry and always got an interesting story to tell, just like Wren this week. But yay! Thank you! Yay! Bye everyone. Thanks again to this week's guest. Make sure you follow DNA of Games on iTunes, Spotify and YouTube. Subscribe and like to ensure that you help this podcast grow and reach new audiences. We appreciate your support.